3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Ready here.
Fire away.
A talking point from our colleagues on the other side that we're obsessed with the White House. It was Jay Carney who perpetuated the myth that it was 2 rogue agents in Ohio. It wasn't any of us. Was that accurate? Was that first initial line of defense that this is just 2 rogue agents in Ohio? Was that accurate, Commissioner?
Not that I know of.
All right, so that wasn't accurate, and that came from the White House. Who said there's not a smidgen of corruption? Who said that, Commissioner?
My understanding is that was the president.
It was the president. So that's Jay Carney and the president both inserting themselves into the IRS scandal. And you want to blame us for bringing the White House into it?
I haven't blamed you at all.
You just did, Commissioner. You just did.
All right, folks, that's just part of what took place last night at the hearing, prime time hearing, the House Oversight Committee. And we have a lot more of that to bring you. The chairman of the Republican National Committee, as mentioned, Reince Priebus, will join us momentarily to weigh in on all of this. Developments today, there was more testimony today, and the man who was in charge of the U.S. Archives, the archivist of the U.S., stated that the IRS did not follow the law with regard to Lois Lerner's lost emails. I want you to say that 3 times fast. Lois Lerner's lost emails. Anyway, so there's a lot to talk about. This is not going away. Ed Berliner and I were talking at the end of his show just a few minutes ago, and I just believe this is going to resonate with the American public. The media could go back into hiding on this issue, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think they can hide on this issue. I think that this resonates with the American public, and it's going to stick around for a long, long time, because what we're seeing from this IRS commissioner, the average person, you or me, could not get away with. Let's go to the chairman, but first let's watch this.
I want to know why you didn't tell us you had lost some of her emails, because that's what we care about.
Can I give you the answer?
Sure.
All right. Our program was to complete the production of all Lois Lerner emails, complete the review of all custodians, and
but it's kind of important, Mr. Commissioner, to tell us when you lost emails for the person that we're focused on. Don't you think? Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a more important question. Did you tell the Justice Department?
No.
Why not? There's a criminal investigation going on. Don't you think that's a pertinent fact that they'd like to know?
We have no evidence that there's any criminal violation involved.
I didn't ask you that. There's a criminal. The President of the United States said on May 15th, we got to get to the bottom of this. The Attorney General said we're going to do everything we can to find out what happened here. And you have information. You still have you talked to the FBI at all?
I have never talked to the FBI about it.
Don't you think it's a
You know, this is like, it's not Abbott and Costello, and it's not a comedy routine, unfortunately, folks. Welcome back. As I promised you, we are joined now by the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, this guy is one of the most arrogant, petulant people I've ever seen in any sort of formal hearing in Washington, D.C. It's unbelievable.
I mean, if someone could get Paul Ryan to perk up the way he did last Friday at the hearing, and other congressmen who normally are more low-key, I mean, this guy, first of all, just that question alone, just that little segment alone, there's a criminal investigation going on at the Justice Department, and he didn't tell them the information because he didn't see any evidence of wrongdoing. I mean, how do you not tell the Justice Department?
To add on to that, though, Steve, that not only do you have all of this surrounding the department, do you know how many open records requests for these emails they must have received through FOIA, legitimate document requests that they have been dealing with? Just to give you an example, just the RNC. I understand we're a political party, but we have been, we're in court right now over document requests for these emails that have lasted now over a year and 3 months. And they have, and just so that you understand how this operates, their lawyers have been responding to us for over a year, seeking extensions one after the next to respond to these document requests. So they have so many people surrounding these emails. So the idea that suddenly they just sort of disappeared and we didn't realize it, it is such a lie, because there's no possible way that all these lawyers could be responding to all of these document requests for years now, and suddenly now, oh, we didn't realize that they were missing. This is just a totally intentional misrepresentation, and potentially criminal. I mean, and that's why I think you need to have a special prosecutor here. I get all the blowback on who's going to do it, and it's not going to be. But you know what? At this point, you need somebody that has some kind of subpoena power and criminal powers to look into what was going on.
Absolutely, but you and I know that's not going to happen. Not in this Justice Department. And furthermore,
not, but go ahead.
No, I mean, it's just not going to happen. And I don't know even how someone will be held responsible. I mean, I know the Congress can impeach, for instance, a man like the IRS commissioner, but you need a Senate to go along with that. So that's not going to happen. Lois Lerner, you know, she's riding out the time.
If you win the Senate in November, and you get some authority on the other side of the street in the Capitol, and have a Republican Senate and you've got a Republican House, this isn't going away.
No, and
this issue's not going anywhere, and it shouldn't go anywhere.
And you heard the Congressman Jordan say, how could you withhold it from the Justice Department? And then he goes on to say, well, when is it obstruction of justice? You know, if you don't tell them for a week, a month, a year, 2 years, when does it become obstruction of justice? And that's a darn good question. I'm not a lawyer. And I'll give you this one, too. The head of the National Archives, or the archivist of the U.S., as his title is officially, David Ferrero, testified today, and he said the IRS did not follow the law on the lost learner emails.
And what about this? Now, this is a separate issue. I was speaking of Paul Ryan. I had dinner with Paul last night, and he was so hacked off at that hearing, and he was sort of surprised too how viral that video went. But I got to tell you, what about the idea of so many people out there right now that are dealing with the IRS that may not have the document or the email or the receipt from the the Salvation Army or the receipt from the church on the amount of the donations, which you've got the check ledger. I mean, all the people out there that are dealing with documentation and the IRS. Now, you don't want to let some intentional scoundrels go with cheating on their taxes. However, don't you think that maybe a little extra burden upon the IRS, where documentation is the issue, ought to be explored so that they themselves can suffer some of their own medicine a little bit on these things?
I think that's.
I don't know how they enforce this stuff.
That's a rhetorical question, and you're absolutely right. And I going forward, I think any fair court, based on what this commissioner has testified, not only what we just heard, but more of the testimony, I just think that it's only fair that it could be. I want the IRS defense. You know.
I mean, you sort of shift the burden on the IRS to prove why it is that the documentation. Or the extra burden of the documentation in question is necessary.
All right, well, Bill Kristol, not to interrupt you, but I just did, I'm sorry. Bill Kristol on the show the other day said that the Republicans should right now force radical change upon the IRS, to have the American public behind them, and also it would force coverage by the media of this whole scandal and what the Republicans would do. Do you believe that this is an opportunity to maybe change the burden, as you put it, or other changes, bring other changes by radically reforming the IRS based on this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we've had a lot of proposals out there. I mean, obviously, Paul Ryan's led the way on drastic budgetary changes that I think should be revisited, but I also think that changes like flat taxes and fair taxes and a total rehaul of our tax system is important and necessary. I am on board with all of that. Unfortunately, none of that happens with a person in the White House who is actually more interested in a European style of government than I think the way that our country was drafted and led to be run by the Constitution. So it's going to be very difficult to do, and certainly with Harry Reid on the other side of running the Senate, it makes it even harder. But I am on board with the idea of totally overhauling or ridding ourselves of the IRS and the tax code and coming up with a better system.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about Hillary. Now, regarding this, Hillary has separated herself from Obama, who is on record as saying there's not even a smidgen of impropriety here. Hillary said if the IRS is involved, it is a scandal. But Hillary has also made gaffe after gaffe after gaffe regarding the, her wealth, and she doubled down on that after taking it back. She said the really rich people, not to name any names, and many people said she was implying Romney. Who the heck knows? We got a minute and a half. Where do you think she is now as and how the public looks at her compared to how the public looked at her before this book tour?
Well, I think she's in much worse shape today than she was before the tour, and obviously much worse condition than she was 18 months ago when she was riding high at a 70% approval rating, and then now she's at 52%. I just don't think, Steve, she's really good at politics. I mean, after all of it's said and done, here you have a potential presidential candidate that the Democratic Party is clamoring around. She has a book rollout that is very well scripted, and you're in the news business. You know how this works. They set up all these interviews. They purposely chose the people that were going to put Hillary in the best light possible. They come out of the gate with Diane Sawyer, and Diane Sawyer pretty much kind of picked her apart. I mean, it was a terrible interview for her. She wasn't ready on the easiest question. She wasn't ready on the money question, which she's had before in 08, and she flubbed it. She wasn't ready on Benghazi. She flubbed that question. So, I mean, before you do these things, I mean, even before I do your show, Steve, the staff comes in for a few minutes and says, here's what we think.
It's the Malzberg briefing. I know. Unfortunately,
you get ready for things.
Absolutely. Reince, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd love to keep you more. We'll do it again soon. Thank you so much. Always appreciate talking to you.
All right. God bless you. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Reince Priebus, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming back with the Malzberg panel.